Hey everyone, thank you so much for checking out this tutorial. This is part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, go ahead and find it on my channel. Before we get into part 2, I just wanted to make a couple of notes on my last tutorial. A couple of people on Reddit pointed out some alternatives to some suggestions I made, as well as taught me a couple of things. So thank you to Vincible Andy and Gazmask for giving me some advice on some alternatives to some of the tips and tricks I gave you guys. So the first thing I want to correct was my way to close the gaps in your timelines. The way I showed you works for older versions of Premiere Pro, but if you're running the latest version, CC18, there's actually a better way to close the gaps in your timelines. So to do so, all you have to do is select the clips that have the gaps in between, go to Sequence, Close Gap. So that's a much faster way of closing your gaps in Premiere Pro if you're running CC18. If not, the other way I showed you is the way to go. Another thing I want to go over that was suggested to me was the metadata display in your project bin. So I suggested that you guys should make a .process folder to keep track of all of the footage that you've gone through. Another way to keep track of the footage you've gone through though is by right-clicking in this area over here, click metadata display, and then under Premiere Pro project metadata, you'll find video usage. And so if you check that and hit OK, I'm just gonna drag it over here just so it's a little bit easier to see. So with video usage, it's gonna let you know where you have all of your source clips. If you click this arrow over here, it'll tell you not only the sequence that it's in, but when it shows up. So I'll click it and it brings my time indicator right to that clip. Next thing I want to go over from my last tutorial is a drawback of the project manager. So when you use the project manager, what ends up happening is all of your source material, so that would be your footage, your audio, your graphics, whatever it might be, all of that is going to be combined into one single folder. So if your original footage was in separate folders, Premiere Pro is going to disregard that and make it all in one folder. So just be aware of that because you might have to reorganize all of your footage afterwards. Another thing I want to go over is the consolidate and transcode. So I didn't actually tell you guys what this actually does, so I'm going to now. This feature is used for archiving, and it actually only copies the portions of the clips that you've used. So it's not going to actually copy the original source material, it's only going to copy the portions of those source clips that you've actually used in your sequences. Alright, and with that out of the way, let's get into part 2 of my Premiere Pro tips and tricks. My first tip for you guys is to create a folder before you import your footage through Media Browser. So what you can do is you create a folder and you have it selected, and then when you go to Media Browser and you import an asset like footage or music, what will happen is the things you import from Media Browser will actually go right into that folder you just created instead of just the project bin. So let me show you real quick. So when I highlight these, right click and import, after they're done importing, you'll see that they populated inside of that folder I created. If you didn't make that folder, or if you didn't have a folder selected, when you import, they'll import straight into your project bin. Up next, I have a Windows trick for all my Windows users out there. Sorry Mac users, you're just gonna have to skip to the next one. So I always suggest going through your media browser when importing footage, but say you have something open in your Windows Explorer already. Instead of going through the media browser to import just a single clip, what I'll do is I'll copy the address bar of my Windows Explorer, and then in Premiere, double click inside the project bin, and then just paste it in the address bar. And now I'm in the same location as that clip, and so I can find it in here and just import that one. Next up is select label group. So when I'm editing, I like to stay organized as much as possible by using different video tracks and different label colors. So say I need to select all of a specific label color, what I can do is I can right click it, go to label, select label group, and now all of the clips with that particular color are selected. Up at number 4 is remove unused. So usually after I'm done with a project, I like to make my project file as small as possible. And one way to do that is to go to Edit, Remove Unused. And what this will do is it'll actually get rid of any unused assets in your project. Alright, and last up, I'm going to show you guys how to create motion blur inside of Premiere Pro so you don't have to do it inside of After Effects anymore. So really quick, I'm just going to make some text. And what I'm going to do is actually apply the transform effect to my layer. And in my effect controls, instead of changing the position within my motion, what I'll do is I'll change the position within my transform effect. I'll just collapse that, go to transform, And let's set some keyframes. So how about real quick, just to show you guys, I'll set a keyframe there, go a couple frames in, and reset it. So if we play that back, there's no motion blur. So what you have to do is uncheck use composition shutter angle, and I'll use 180 because when I'm shooting at 24 frames a second, that's the shutter angle I'm using. And now if we look at this, you'll see that there is motion blur. And to make this a little better, what I'll do is I'll actually interpolate the keyframes using Bezier, just to ease the motion. So that's motion blur inside of Premiere Pro. All right, everyone, that's it for today. If you liked what you saw, please feel free to give me a like or subscribe, share with your video editing friends, and follow me on the internet. I'm most active on Instagram, but I'm also on Facebook. If you haven't checked out my demo reel already, check it out on YouTube. This project was actually my homecoming, so you can check that out on my YouTube channel as well. And again, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.